implementing and administrating ADDS sites and replications. Now we'll see in this we will see ADDS replications, ADDS sites, and also we will configure the ADDS replications and ADDS sites. Now first, what are the ADDS partitions? Now ADDS partitions, we have ADDS different partitions of Active Directory database. Active Directory database is divided into different partitions. So when we have an Active Directory database, it is actually divided into different partitions. These partitions are schema partition, domain partition, and configuration partition. And also we have an application partition, which have an information about the applications. A big application, when we install the big application into the Active Directory, so it stores the information about that application into the application partition. Now for the domain partition, we have the information about the domain specific objects. Domain specific objects, for example, the domain containers, OUs and users, groups, all those informations are in this domain partition. Then schema partition contains the forest-wise definition and rules for creating and implementing objects and attributes. Basically, it stores the schema of our Active Directory. So the whole schema is stored into the schema partition, which defines the forest-wide creation of objects and attributes. Then in a configuration partition, it has the forest-wide information about the ADDS structure. So what is the ADDS structure? It is stored into this configuration partition. Now these partitions is going to be replicated in all the domains and all the domains in the forest and the domain controllers in the domain. And for that we need to have the sites. We can see those partitions in our server, in our domain controller. If you go to tools, you have a tool called ADSI Edit. This is Active Directory Services database management or partition management tool, which you can do what we can use to manage the partitions. We can see the partitions here. This is Active Directory Service interface editor. This is a low level editor for Active Directory domain services, and also directory lightweight directory services. So it shows nothing here. So first you have to do what? You have to connect to the partition with the domain controller. Now here it is saying the name of the naming context, and it is taking a default name. This is the path, and here it is saying select the well-known naming context, and here you can see the configuration partition, the root partition, and the schema partition. If I select the schema partition, so we can see the schema partition of our Active Directory. And under the schema partition we have what? Objects and attributes. All the objects which we can create in Active Directory, it is defined under this schema. And you can see the objects like, for example, account. We can create accounts, and these are the attributes of that account. And we can even edit these attributes here, but this is very low level editing. If you don't know what you are doing, you should not edit anything from here. Same as you can see other you can add other partitions also. You can add the configuration partition, where you can see the configurations. All these configuration like forest wide configuration, where you have the sites, services, physical locations, partitions or partition objects, interiors, quotas, lost and found, forest updates, display, extended rights, all these things. So these are the partitions we have, which is going to be replicated within the site. Now first we have by default a single site, but we can configure multiple sites. And why we configure the multiple sites? So that we can control the replications. Replication means what? When we create one object in one domain controller, so that object must be updated on all the other domain controllers. and when the domain controller, when we change anything in the other domain controllers, so that must be updated on all the other domain controllers. So that is done by the replication. Replication happens from one domain controller to other domain controllers, and the sites will control, the sites and services controls that how the replication will done and which data will be replicated, those partitions will be replicated within the domain and also within the forest. So characteristic of the ADDS replications are multi-master replication. Multi-master replications, that means it is replicated to multiple domain controllers. It ensures the accuracy, that means the integrity, consistency, that means the convergence time will be less. Then the performance, that means keeping the replication traffic to a reasonable level. Then the key characteristics of the ADDS replication includes the multi-master replication. That means it is happened with the multiple domain controller. Then it is pull replications, that means it will pull the replication, like in one domain controller will pull the replication from the other domain controller. It is not like a push replication, it is like pull replication. That means if two domain controllers are there, and if suppose those domain controller will talk to each other, and one domain controller says that I am having the latest information, so the other domain controller will send the pull request and it will pull the information from that one domain controller. It is not like the one domain controller which has the new change will push the new changes to the other domain controller. Then store and forward replication, it is also store and forward replication. It do store first and then forward. Then partitions is going to be replicated. Automatic generation of an efficient robust replication topology. The topology, that means that way the domain controllers are connected and the way they are going to be replicated the data. For that, the replication topology will be created automatically, and basically we don't have to modify that things because ActiveDirectory do it very best. It is do it in a good way, and automatically it generates a best topology suitable for the topology or for the network. So we don't have to create manually topology, but we can create it, but it is not needed. Automatically it will create the best topology. Attributes level and multi-level multi-value replications are done. Distinct control of inter-site replications. We can control that how and when it is going to be replicated from one site to the other site. Collusion detection and management also be done in the replication of Active Directory. Now, how the ADDS replication works within a site. So within a site, that means within a site, if we have 2-3 domain controllers, so they will do the replication to each other. That means if you send something in DC1, then it is going to be replicated to DC2 and DC3 also. So it is inter-site, it is intra-site replication. It is called intra-site replication. That means it happens within the site. So connection objects for inbound replication to a domain controller. There is a connection object created. So they will do define the connection status. Then knowledge consistency checker to automatically create a topology that is efficient, maximum 3-hop and robust 2-way. That means this KCC is responsible for creating or generating automatic topology for the replication, and it do it best, and it do it in a good way. It uses the efficient topology. It goes for maximum 3 hops, or it try to use 2 ways, or that means 2 robust way. That means it try to go to try to add 2 ways or 2 paths to the replications. Then notification, in which the domain controller tells its downstream partners that a change is available. So it notifies, is notification in which the domain controller, it notifies that the other domain controller that the downstream partner is change available. Then pulling, in which the domain controller checks with its upstream partners for changes. So it will pull. It is I said what it is, a pull replication. It is not push. So downstream domain controller directory replication agent replicates the changes, and changes to all partitions held by both domain controllers are replicated. So whatever the changes you have in DC1, it is going to be replicated. Whatever the changes you have in DC2, it is also going to be replicated. Now resolving the replication conflict. So if sometime it has a conflict, so in multi-master application model, replication conflicts arise. Multi-master, that means we have multiple domain controllers, and all those domain controllers are having the right to do the changes. So if sometimes some domain controller do the other changes and some other domain controller do the other changes, so it may be a conflict between them. So the same attribute is changed on two domain controllers simultaneously. Like for example, we have user 1 in the domain controller DC1, and same user we see on DC2 also. Now from DC1, some administrator changes the first name, or suppose changes the IT department, and same from the other domain controller, some other administrator has changed the information to some other department. Whatever, it is being changed simultaneously, then it can be a conflict. So if this thing happens, it is simultaneously changed, then it leads to the conflict. Then an object is moved or added to or to a deleted container on another domain controller. That means it is available on every domain controller, but in some domain controller it is added into the deleted container. That means it is deleted. The user is deleted from the other controller. Then two objects with the same relative distinguished name are added to the same container on two different domain controllers. That means with the same distinguished name in the same container, added from the two different ways. Like from one domain controller it is adding same user, and from the other domain controller it is also trying to add the same user at the same time. So it will become the conflict. To resolve the replication conflict, ADDS uses the version number and also the timestamp and server GUID. So to resolve the conflict, replication and the conflict will happen when the replication will done. That means if suppose we do something on DC1 and somebody else is doing something on DC2, domain controller 2, so they will not know until the replication happens. So when the replication start to happen, then what? It will see the conflict. Now how it is going to resolve the conflict? So it will see the version number, update sequence version, it sees the version number, that what version number is the latest one, and it will try to use that version number to be, it will try to keep that version number which is latest. Then also it will try to check the timestamp. So whatever the timestamp is the latest one, it will do what? It will try to keep that. Then also it will try to check the server GUID, a unique ID for the server, to resolve the conflicts of replication. Now how the replication topology is generated? So replication topology generated automatically. We don't have to generate anything. Like this is domain A topology, which is replicating only in domain A. These are domain A controllers. Then domain B is there. So domain B will control their own topology. It will create their own topology. Then for the schema and configuration topology, schema and configuration topology need to be replicated within the whole forest. So it is going to be replicated on domain A and domain B both. So you can see it is creating the topology from both sides. It is replicating on all the domain controllers, whether it is domain A or domain B. Then also the global catalog replication. Now global catalog replication will happen within global catalog servers. Like this B1 is a global catalog server, A1 and A4 is a global catalog server. So they will do the replication to each other. And it is it looks like very complex topology, but Active Directory KCC is handling the topology. It creates the efficient topology for all the replications. Then we have the sysvol folder. Now when we install the Active Directory and configure the server to be a domain controller, it creates the sysvol folder also. This sysvol folder contains the logon scripts and group policy templates and GPUs with their content. So whatever the policies we configure for the user accounts or machine accounts, so these policies will be replicated, or it reaches the users and computers by using this share folder. This folder is shared and it contains all those login scripts, group policy templates and GPUs with their contents. So this sysvol replication can take place using the FRS, which is primarily used in Windows Server 2003 and older domain structures, and also DFS, that is domain files, distributed file system replication, which is used in Server 2008 and newer domain controllers. Now this is both are used to share the directories because the sysvol is a shared directory. Now to migrate sysvol replication from FRS to DFS replication, the domain functional level must be at least Windows Server 2008. So if in case you are using the FRS for 2003 Windows servers, so if you are using, that means you are using Windows Server 2003 and you want to upgrade it, so you have to first increase the domain functional level and forest functional level, and then you can use the command dfsr mig migration tool to perform the migration from FRS to DFS. So we can use this tool to migrate it. Now right now we are using Server 2016, so there is no way that we have this Server 2003 FRS sysvol replication. We have all DFS replication right now by default. Now configuring Active Directory domain services sites. Now first, what are the ADDS sites? So these sites identify the network location with fast, reliable and network connections. And sites are associated with the subnet objects. Sites are used to manage replication when domain controllers are separated by slow, expensive link. Services localization, that means domain controllers authentication, ADDS aware, site aware, and ADDS aware, that means the site aware services or application. Now basically the sites, Active Directory domain sites is define the physical boundary. Now remember, domains defines the logical boundary and sites defines the physical boundary. Now what that means, when we create a forest or domain, so that defines the logical boundary. For example, this is my domain. So if I have created the domain, so it defines the logical boundary. It does not know that where the physical boundaries are there. Like for example, our domains, we have offices in different cities or different countries or different region even, and we wanted to be them. They all be in the same domain. They can all be they can all also be in the same domain. That means we have one office in a physical location here under the Mumbai, let's say, and we have one domain controller there in Mumbai. Now this is our Mumbai office, or we can say main office. Then we have other offices in another location, let's say for example in Bangalore. So there is a domain controller for them, and it is a office there. It is our organization network there. Then we have another office in another location, let's say we have in Pune. So for them we have also created installed the domain controller, and this is for them for the Pune site or for the Pune. Now it is logically it is in the same domain. Now what will be the problem here? First, the replication must be done. So replication, we need to connect these sites. So we need to connect the sites. That means we need to connect with the WAN link. Now WAN links, as we know, it is expensive. So sometimes we do what, we connect only main office to branch office. We don't connect branch office to branch office because we need another line for them. So we can use this topology, like we can use the topology like we only connect the branch office to main office and we don't connect branch office to branch office. If we want to do the communication between branch to branch office, then they can do that by going from the main office and then from that main office, through the main office, they can connect the other branch office. So if these branch offices wants to connect each other, they can go from the main office, or otherwise we can connect directly branch office to branch office. This will be called full mesh topology, or we can use spoke and hub topology, like these branch offices will work like a spoke. They don't connect directly, and this main office will work like a hub. So they will if they want to connect each other, so they will go through the main office. So main office will work like a hub for them. It will join these two branch offices. Or we can create the mesh topology, like we have this direct link. Remember, this is the physical connection. This is the physical design of our network, where we have divided the we have a distributed network, where we have different cities, we have different networks, and those we have connected through the slow WAN links. Now for the domain, it is single. If you concerned with the domain, it is single. That means if suppose we have some user here in the Pune side, and he wants to log into the domain, there is a machine here, and the user wants to log into this domain, this machine. So remember, it is wanted to log into the domain. So now domain, all the domain controller has the information about this user. So when the user give username and password and press login here, so the login information will go on to this domain controller, and this domain controller will authenticate the user, and then user will log in. Now remember, the domain is a logical boundary. It is not defining the physical boundary, but physically they are divided. Now sometime this user will authenticate from this domain controller, or sometime it will go to authenticate on this domain controller, because it is not defined here the physical boundary. It is defined only logical boundary, and for the domain, all these domain controller in the single place. If you look into the, if you look as a domain, so for the domain, these three domain controllers are in the same place, in the same network. So user can go to this domain controller, user can go to this domain controller, and even user can go to this domain controller for authentication also. Now if it is authenticating from the local domain controller, it will authenticate very quickly and it will log in very quickly. Now if suppose it goes on to, if it is trying to authenticate from this domain controller, which is in a different location, different site, different city, connected through the WAN link, which is slow WAN link, so it can take a long time. And if it is trying to authenticate it from this domain controller, which is another site, and if suppose this direct link is not there, then what, it will take a very long time to go there. And if it is a direct link, still it will take a long time. So sometime this user will log in within a 10 second. Sometime this user logs in hour, after half an hour, and sometime this user logs in after a full hour. That means it will have to wait for that it is saying loading, and it will take time to log in that user. So the user will complain us that what is this, why it is taking too long. Now that is because we have not configured the properly sites. We have not configured the proper sites for this, depending on this physical topology. So basically the sites we configured based on our physical topology. So if our physical topology is like this, so we will configure the site according to our physical topology. So what is the physical topology is defined, it is depending on that we configure our sites. So the sites define the physical objects. It is basically a physical object. It has the domain controllers, physical domain controllers. It has a physical connection objects which defines the physical connections. It defines the physical, it defines the subnets, that which subnet is in this city, which subnet is in this city, which subnet is in this city. Now why I am saying that this user can log into this domain controller and in this domain controller and in this domain controller, because they all in the same domain, and by default we don't have multiple sites. Remember, by default there is only one site configured and the site is default site. So in a domain, by default there is only one site, and whatever the domain controller we install that is in different cities, they all domain controllers by default will go to that default site. So if we want to manage this properly, then we have to configure that the sites for each different physical location. So if the scenario is like this, then we have to create 3 sites. That one site is here for Pune, and one site for Mumbai network, one site for the Bangalore network. And we also have to define the connection object, that how they are connected, what is the speed of that link. So all we have to define, and also we have to define we can define actually that how and when the replication will happen from this site to the other site, and these all things is defined by the sites and services. So why we implement the additional sites? So creating the additional sites when a slow link separates a part of the network. Part of the network, that means the site A is located in different location, different city, and site B is located in different city. So they are connected with the slow WAN link. So that is why we do what? We configure them in a separate site. Otherwise what happens? Users of this site will try to log in from anywhere, from this domain controller or even from this domain controller. Then a part of a network has enough users to warrant hosting domain controllers or other services in that location. Then you want to control the service localization, so that you want to control that this service is only available in this local site. User should not go to use the services from other site. And you want to control the replication between domain controllers. Then also you want to control the replication. That means these within the site, these domain controller can do the replication freely, but when they want to send the replication from one site to other site, then this we want to control, that when and how this replication will happen, because this is a slow WAN link and it is used when the users are working, our users are working and every other services are working. So at that time we don't want to waste that bandwidth to doing the replication. So we will do it when we are having the free time, so we can control it. Now how we can configure the site? Remember, by default we have only single site. So if you want, then you can configure multiple sites, whatever you like. Like for example, I have this topology. We have these 3 sites, in different locations. So I will configure these 3 sites now. Now for configuring the sites, we can configure it from any domain controller. This is our server. This is our domain controller 1. So I will do what? I will go to tools, and here we have Active Directory sites and services. From here we can manage our sites and services of our Active Directory domain. So when you open this, it opens the Active Directory sites and services console. Now here we see the sites. Now when you open the sites, you will see only single site here, and this single site name is default first site name. And when you open this default first site, you will see servers here, and when you open servers, you will see all your domain controllers here. So all the domain controllers by default goes to this site, the first default site, and that is why the Active Directory thinks that all these domain controllers are in the same location. So if they are located in different locations, so what we should do, we should create the different sites. So for my example, what I will do here, I will create this default site as our main site. So I will do what? First I will rename it so that it will be easily understand. This is our Mumbai site. Now I want to create new site. So I will right click on this sites and I will select new site. And here you will mention the new site name. And also you have to select the link, site link. Right now we have only one site link. So I will select this site link for this site also, but we have to configure the site also, the link also, but for now I'm creating only site. So I will select the default site. Now when you select that, it says this, the site has been created. To finish the configuration, ensure that Pune is linked to other sites with the site link as appropriate. That means whenever you configure the site, so you have to configure the site link also. The link, that means how those sites are connected, and the link will depend on the physical connection. Remember, it will depend on the physical connection. That means it is not going to take automatically the physical connection type. We have to define that whatever the physical connection we have, so based on that we will create this link, site link. Then also we have to add the subnet information for the site. That means when we have different sites, so normally we will have different subnets in the different sites. We may not have the same subnet in all those different sites because they are located in different locations. So definitely by default they will get the different subnets, and they have to have the different subnets. So we have to define the subnet also. Then we have to add the domain controllers in those sites. That means whatever the domain controllers we have, so we have to define that which domain controller is located in which site. So we can do what? We can install the domain controller directly on the site, or we can move the domain controller from existing sites to other sites. So this is what it is saying. I say yes, I know that, so I will create this. Now we see this another site here, Pune, but there is no server in this Pune. Both the servers are in this Mumbai site. I will create one more site. And this will be our let's say Kolkata. And again I am selecting the same link because right now we have only that link available, but we have to create the separate link for them. So again I created one more site here. So we have now 2 extra sites depending on our physical location, but the server is already there in this site. But this server, for me this server is on Pune. I know the server is located in Pune. So what I will do, I will move this server to this Pune site. So how I can do that? I can drag and drop, I can hold it, and I can drop it into this Pune. And when I drag it, it says that when you move, so it will the group policy will be applied based on that destination OU or destination site. So I'll say okay, yes. And now the server is moved to this Pune OU, or we can say Pune site, not OU. Now if the server is already there, so what we do, we move the server, drag and drop the server to the site. And if the server is not there, then we can install the server directly on the site. So if the server is not there, so we can do what? We can drag and drop the server, and we can directly install the server in the new site. So when we are installing the server and configuring the server as a domain controller, so we get the option to select the site. And if you want to install the server in a particular site, so we should select the site at that time, and we can install the server directly on the site. Like this domain controller, I am promoting this domain controller, this server 3. So we have the server, so we can drag and drop the server in the site, and if it is no server there, so we can directly create the server in the site. So when you promote the server to be a domain controller, we select add a new domain controller to an existing domain, and when we go next, so we will see the site option. On this stage, we see the site option here. So what we see here that do you want to install the DNS, do you want to use a global catalog, or you want to configure this server as a read-only domain controller. I will show you this read-only domain controller also. Now here it is asking which site you want. Now it is not showing any site here because there is 3 sites we have. By default when there was only one site, so it was showing that one site here. Now we have 3 sites. So when you drop it this drop down, so you will see all these 3 sites. So I want to install this domain controller in this site. So I select that particular site and the server is going to be installed directly on that server. And if you feel like it is on the other side, so you can move it anytime. So we have 2 options. Either we create the domain controller directly on the site, or we can do what? We can move the domain controller from one site to other site. Now this is going to be installed in the new site which we have created. So I will install this, and after installation it is going to be created in the new site. Now how the replication works between the sites. So replication within the site assumes the fast, expensive and highly reliable network links and does not compress the traffic, use a change notification mechanism. So within the site it happens very fast. The replication will happen very fast because it assumes that the network is highly available, the expensive, fast, the highly reliable network, fast network, and it does not compress the traffic also. So when it is replicating, it is not compressing the traffic also, it is directly sending the traffic, and it uses a change notification mechanism. That means when the change happens to server A, so it will notify to server B, and the server B then pull the information from server A. Then replication between the sites. Now here it assumes the higher cost. That means it assumes that the higher cost is the fastest link. That means if the cost is high, so the link is slow, and limited bandwidth and unreliable network links. So here it assumes, remember it is saying assumes because it does not know about the physical link. We have to define the physical link based on based on our physical link, and it always assumes that this is not the the fast link or a highly reliable link, and it assumes based on the cost which we configured on the link, then has the ability to compress the replication. So it assumes that the link is slow and which is going to take the time to send the replication, so it will do what? It will do compress the replication data also, and occurs on a configured schedule. That means we can configure the schedule for sending the replication from one site to other site, and can be configured for immediate and urgent replication also. So we can configure it immediately replication, like if we have a fast link available, then we can configure the replication immediately. Otherwise we can configure it based on the schedule. Then what is the inter-site topology generator? So there is this is an object created under the server. It defines the replication between ADDS sites on a network. So basically the object defines the network, the replication sites, ADDS site replication between the ADDS sites. So how the replication is going to be from one site to other site, it defines on that object. It is called inter-site topology generator. We don't have to create this object, it is automatically created. Then there are DNS. DNS is very important because DNS is the server which is locating all the services. So when any client wants to connect the domain controller, wants to do the authentication, so it first goes to the DNS server, and DNS server will say that you have to go to this this domain controller for it, and then the sites and services defines that where you are going to be authenticated. So DNS will resolve the domain the server's request to the closest DNS server, the closest domain controller, then the sites and services will decide that where you are getting the services. So domain controllers register the SRV records as follows, like the records in the sites. You can see there is a record for sites, and in those sites, in the different sites, it records the different locations. So in those sites, which servers are having the GC, Kerberos and LDAP services. So it defines by this TCP dot the domain name, all domain controllers in the domain, for all domain controllers in the domain, and TCP dot site name dot site the site domain name, all services in the specific site. Then clients query DNS to locate the services in specific site. So where the services are there in the particular site, it is defined by the DNS. So how the client computers locates the domain controller within the site. So the process for locating the domain controller is like, first the new client queries for all domain controllers in the domain. It goes for all domain controllers. The client attempts an LDAP ping to find all domain controllers. It is trying to find the whole domain controller in the full domain. Then first domain controller responds. So whatever the first domain controller is available, that domain controller will respond. Then the client queries for all domain controllers in the site. Now the client will query that what domain controller is there in my site, and the client attempts an LDAP ping to find all domain controllers in the site, and the site forms an affinity. The affinity, that means if it is having a multiple domain controller, so which domain controller is going to be respond, it is defined by the affinity. Moving the domain controllers, as we saw that if you have a domain controller available already installed, so we can drag and drop into other site, or if the domain controller is not created, so we can directly create the domain controller in the new site. So we have created that. We have created this new domain controller server 3 directly on the new site. So when you see the sites and services, so under the sites and services, Active Directory sites and services, this was the site where we have created the domain controller. So I will do what? I will refresh it, and now I can see the server is created here. Now under the server, you see this NTDS thing, NTDS setting, and under the NTDS setting, you can see this automatically generated, and this is the automatically generated ICTS. This is the connection object. This is the ISTG, which is created automatically here, which defines the connection, defines the replication between two sites. The sites, how the site is going to be replicated. In every site, you will see this automatically generated. We don't have to create this; it is automatically generated. Right now, it is not created in this new server, but when it will do the replication, it will also create that. Then configuring and monitoring ADDS site replication. So what are the site ADDS site links? So the site links contains within a site link connection object can be created between any two domain controllers. So we can create the site link. Right now, by default, there is only one site, that is called the default site. The default site link is not always appropriate for your network topology. So by default, we have only one link that is called default site link, but that is not appropriate. So if we have only one site link and we connect all the sites together with that link, so it is not a good idea. These site links must be defined based on your physical topology and physical link. So based on that, we should create the different site for different with different site link for different sites. So what is the site link bridging? There is a bridging also there. By default, automatic site link bridging, that is enable the ISTG to create connection object between the site links, and always disabling of transitive and on properties of the IP transport. The site link bridges enable you to create the transitive site links manually and are useful only when the transitive is disabled. Now that means what, you have these site links here which is connecting these different sites, Beijing, C, AMS, and this is our main headquarter. Now if you by default it is going from this site to these branch offices. Now if you want to connect directly the AMS site to the C site, then you can create the site link bridge, which will connect directly from this C to AMS, so that they will do the connection directly from here to there. Otherwise they will go from the headquarter to the branch office. So site link will do what, it will enable the transitivity if it is disabled by default. So disable because it is the ISTG which created automatically, it does not allow the transport for this transitive. So we can create the site bridge for that, site link bridges. Then what is the universal group membership caching? Now remember, universal groups are for giving the permission or giving the permission on any object within the whole forest. So if you are having a universal group, so universal group is assigned the permission to some object, some resources, and it is on the other side. So in our side it can do what? We can do the universal group membership caching also. That means this group membership, universal group membership caching enables a domain controller in a site with no global catalog server to cache the universal group membership. So for example, if we have a global catalog server available in other site, and in our site there is no global catalog server. Remember, global catalog server have the information about that which group has which permission on which resources, and which users are member of which group, and by the group which resources access they are getting. So we can do what we can if we don't have the global catalog server here on this domain controller within the site, by default it is available, we should configure the global catalog server. If it is not configured here, so it will do what, when the user try to access any resources, so it has to go to first the global catalog server to get the information, and then it will allow it to access the resources by the universal group or any group, global group or universal group, but mostly the universal group. So if we don't want to go to every time other site, we can do what, we can cache the global universal group in directly our this site domain controller. Even it is not a global catalog server, but here we can do what, we can cache the group membership, this universal group membership. So who are the members here, what resources it has permission, we can cache it into our domain controller within the site, which is not a global catalog server. So it is not ever, it does not have to go every time to other site to get the information. Then for managing the inter-site replication, that means when we have two sites and we want to connect them together with the link, so how we can manage the replication also. We can manage the link by the link cost. The replication uses the connection with the lowest cost. So when we configure the site link, so we have option to define the cost, and the lowest cost we'll use first. Then during the pooling, the downstream bridge head pools its upstream partners by default every 3 hours, and minimum is 15 minutes, and recommended is also 15 minutes. This is the pooling, that means when it pulls the information from the other servers, so it do it by default after 3 hours, or minimum it can go up to 15 minutes, or recommended is also 15 minutes. Replication schedules can be 24 hours, or we can schedule to whatever we want. And this is the inter-site link link properties. So when we configure the link, so this is the configuration, like we can configure the name here, description, then we can configure that this link is connecting which two sites, then we can configure the cost here, that what cost it is having, and also we can configure the schedule for it. Also we can configure replicate every after 180 minutes, or we can configure the schedule for it. This is the link properties which we can configure. Now how we can configure that, let's see that. But remember, it depends on our physical topology. Now for example, for our example, what we have these three sites here. We have configured the three sites. Now we have connected these three sites with the WAN links. Now this one is 1 Mbps link, this one is 2 Mbps link, then we have this as a 512 kbps link. Now we know that this is our link speed, this is our WAN link. So based on this speed, we know that this one is the fastest link we have, this one is a slow link we have, slowest link we have, this is the average link we have. So when we configure the link for these sites, so we can configure based on this characteristic. This is this physical characteristic. So our site knows that which link is fast and which link is slow. So where to go, because it is a mesh topology. So if Pune wants to go to Mumbai, so it can go from here also and it can go from here also. So it will decide the connection based on the speed, based on the cost. So based on the speed we will define the cost, and also we will define that what is the schedule we want to configure. So based on the schedule it will do the replication also. So we have these three sites. Now by default these three sites are connected with the default link. The default link, that means we have connected them with the default link, and that link is this link. This is the inter-site transport option, and in that inter-site transport option we have this IP transport, that means the transport for the IP network. We also have this SMTP network also, which we can create, but this is for exchange servers. This is for exchange servers, like if you are having the exchange servers, so you can create the different connection object for the exchange server traffic also. But all the other traffics, it is going to use this IP transport traffic, and this is the default link for it. Now what we will do is this link, I will decide that this link is to connect Mumbai from Pune. So I will rename it accordingly so that I will understand what this link is. So this link is to connect Mumbai to Pune. Now when I open this link, I can see here that all the sites are connected to this specific link. So first I will do what? I will remove this Kolkata here, because it is not to connect this Kolkata to any other site. This site only connecting Pune to Mumbai. Then I will define the cost accordingly. That means according to the cost, according to the speed of the link which we have. So based on that we will define the cost. Remember, the lowest cost means the fastest bandwidth, or the preferred speed, or the preferred link. Now we know that Pune Mumbai link is 1 Mbps. So I will do what? And the fastest link is 2 Mbps. So slowest link is 512. So this is 1 Mbps link. So this is average one. So I will do what? I will put this as a let's say 70. Cost is 70. Now this one is what? The replication. Replicate every 180 minute. It is going to be replicated every 180 minute, but we can change it also. We can put the schedule here. Schedule like when we want to do the replication, when we want to not do the replication. So we can decide that when and what time it is going to be replicated. If you don't define the schedule, so it is going to be replicated based on this time, that means after every 180 minutes. Then other options are here, like object. This is the detail about the object. This is the revision number here, sequence number, and this is to protect the object from accidental delete. So if you want to delete, protect it from accidental delete, then you can click here. Then this is the security options, which defines who can read, who can write, and who can modify, who can have the full control to use or configure this connection link. By default, all the authenticated user can only see this, and only domain admins and enterprise admin can do have the edit permissions. Then also we have the attribute editors. If you want to, okay, for that you have to first apply the changes. Okay, here you will see the attributes in detail, and if you want to edit it like from here, so you can edit this from here. But if you don't know what you're doing, so don't if you don't know, then you should not do this anything, you should not edit anything from here. So we edited the link here to join Mumbai to Pune. Now I will create one more link here. Right click, new link, and also we have option to create bridge. We will create this when we have multiple sites and we want to connect the site directly, like 2 branch offices directly. So we can do this. Now I will create new site link. Now this site link will connect Mumbai to Kolkata. Now the site link name will be Mumbai to Kolkata. Now it is created here. To modify the attribute, modify the properties, we'll open this. We go to the properties. Now we can define the cost here. Now this one is the fastest link we have. So I will do what? I will put here 80. I can even put 100, but I will keep a space for the other option also. Like if I have more speed than this, then I can use the other numbers like 90, 100 or whatever. Then I can set the schedule also. Then I will create one more link that will connect Kolkata to Pune. Now we know this one is the slow one. So I will create this. Now we know this one is the slowest one. So I will reduce the cost to, let's say, 50. So this is how we create the physical link. Based on the cost, it is decide that which link is fast and which link is slow. Now when you create the sites, then we have to also configure the subnet for the sites, because when the client try to connect the site, trying to find the site, try to send the information, trying to access the site, then it try to access it by using the LDAP ping, and for that it has to know the subnet. So the request will go within the subnet first. So when the user try to log in, when the user first try to log in from this site, so it will try to find the information from the local subnet first, and for that the site must know that this site, that means the Pune site, is having which subnet. So we have to configure the subnet information also, that this, in this site what subnet network we have, in this site what subnet we have, on this site what subnet we have. So we have to configure the subnet object also. So I will do right click and create new subnet. Right now it is having default subnet, that means all. So I will say for Mumbai subnet, Mumbai is using this network. Then for Kolkata, it is using this subnet. Then for Pune, I say that this one is having this subnet. So we have to define the subnet for each network. Remember, when we created the new site, it says that you have to create the site link, appropriate site link for every site, that how they are connected. Then also you have to provide the subnet information for each site, that what subnets they are having in their sites. Then also you have to configure or add the servers in the sites. So this is how we do what? We configure the site, we configure the link for the site, and also we configure the subnet for the site. Rest of the thing it will do automatically. It will generate the automatically this generator, this link, the link automatically this ISTG. And if suppose the replication is not happening, so what we can do? We can right click and we can say replicate now also. So it is going to replicate based on the schedule or based on the time we have configured on the link. And if it is not replicating right now, so what we can do? We can right click it and we can say replicate now. And also when you see the properties of this object, so you can see the object here, that this is the server name, this is the site name, replication name context is this, and partially replicate naming context to all domain controllers. This is using the IP transport. We can even schedule here also. This is the schedule set by default, and the other information about this object. Then you have this object. You can see the properties of this object, where you can see the option for global catalog. So if you want to remove the global catalog option from this server 1, so you can remove it from here. If you don't want to have global catalog, so you can remove it from here. Then it is showing the connection object. It is connected to server 2, and other object information. When you right click on this, it says replicate configuration from the selected DC, or replicate configuration from the selected DC, or new active domain services connection you want to create. So I will select, it is going to replicate the information from the selected DC, what is selected in that. So this is what the sites and services, how we can configure it. Now tools for monitoring and managing the replication, we have command line tool that is called rep admin, and these are the command examples for this, like rep admin show replication for the domain controller. It will show you the replication for the domain controller. If you want to see the connection, then you will run show connection command to show the object metadata. You can see with this command. Then you can see the replication rep admin KCC. It will show you the consistency checker. It will show you that information. We can use the DC diag also, domain controller diagnostic tool, to test the site name. It will check the site name. It will show you the first FRS event or DFSR event, DFSR event, or inter-site KCC event, replication or topology event. Then we can use the monitor replication with operational manager, or we can use the PowerShell also for monitoring or managing it. Now sometime in a site we want to create the read-only domain controller. Read-only domain controller, that means it is a domain controller, but it does not have a read-write. That means you cannot create any object there. All the objects will be replicated from the main domain controller. The main domain controller which has the read-write permissions. So it will help us to create the domain controllers where there is no security, where there is no physical security for our domain controllers. That means there is a site here, site A, and here we have enough amount of users that need to have a domain controller, but actually the site is not secure, that anybody can access the server. And anybody can access the server, that means there is no physical security. And if suppose some hacker able to access the server, they can do what? They can steal the information. They have some tools which they try to boot the server with that tools, and they can steal the informations. Now what they can steal? If it is a normal domain controller, so what the hacker will steal from here? They can steal what? all the users and their passwords information. They can steal all the users and the password information. This is the important thing. It is not like you cannot create anything, but that they can do what? They can steal everything from here. And when suppose it is steal the information about the users and password, that means it can compromise the whole Active Directory objects. Now in that kind of case, what we can do, we can use the read-only domain controller in that site. Now read-only domain controller will do what? It is, as a name says, it is read-only domain controller. We create this like we normally create the normal domain controllers, but it is a different domain controller. It is read-only, that means we don't have we don't have a permission to create any object here in this domain controller. But the main thing is that it is not having any password information about all the Active Directories. That means if suppose we have here 50 users, so we can do what? We can only have the password and username information of these 50 users, not the whole 1000 users of our whole Active Directory. Remember why we are creating the domain controller here? So that the users of this domain site, they can log in directly from this domain controller. They don't have to go to the other site to log in. So when the user put username and password, that username and password must be authenticated from here. And for that, this domain controller must have the information about username and password. So it will have the username and password stored here, but it is not stored, it is actually cached. And it will cache only the password and username of these 50 users which we define. The users which is logging here, which is available on this site. So what we will do here, the users which is available on this site, we will create a group for them, that 50 users group. And when we configure this RODC, we will define that group name here, that this group passwords information will be cached. Other informations will not be cached. So if even suppose the hacker is able to gain the access of the server, and it will try to extract the username and password of the users, so they can get only the username and password of these 50 users, not the whole 1000 users. And this is the main and important benefit of having the read-only domain controller. Now how we can configure this? We can configure this normally like we normally configure the domain controllers. Only the difference is that we select one tick there which says the read-only domain controller. Like this server we have here, first we have to install the Active Directory domain services like we do it for the normal domain controller, and then we select this domain controller to promote this domain controller. Now when we select promote this domain controller, it opens the wizard to promote it, and we select this add a domain controller to an existing domain, just like we do it for the normal domain controllers. But in the next step, we have an option to select read-only domain controller. So here we have to select read-only domain controller. Okay, so now previously it was a domain controller, normal domain controller, so I demote that domain controller. Now I want to create it read-only. So this option is there to create reinstall the domain controller is saying here. Otherwise this option will not come when you do it for the first time. So I want to select this here, read-only domain controller. Then we have one more option that we can remove this GC. That means we don't have to have GC here. If you don't have to have GC, that means the global catalog information will be coming from the main domain controllers. So if you want, then you can keep the GC, or if you want more secure, then you should not create the GC. But you can have DNS here. DNS information we can have, and the DNS information, that means we can also create the secondary zone here, so that it will not create it will not have the option to write anything. Now next, when you select to create the read-only domain controller, so actually first it will ask you that first delegate the administrator account. That means we can delegate a separate administrator for that domain controller, read-only domain controller, and we can do it from that site. Like main administrator don't have to go every time to that site to manage anything. That user, we can create some user and administrator from that site also. then we can select the accounts that are allowed to replicate password to the RODC. So we can select the group here, the group which we want to allow the password caching, the group which we created for that 50 users. By default there is a one group there, allowed RODC password replication group. So either we create a new group or we make members, we make all the members to this group. But this is only one group, and if you have multiple sites where if you have 2-3 sites where you want to create RODC, then you should create a separate group for each RODC. This one is the default one and this one is already there. So if you want, then you can use this group and add all the users to this group, or you can create new group. Then here it is saying denied the replication password. These groups will never cache the password there in RODC, like administrators group, server operators, and these are the main groups. And all the users which you don't want to cache the user their password there, you can add them into this group, denied RODC password replication group. So this is the option, this is only the separate option here. Rest of the things are same for the RODC. And then you can install this. It will take a little time and then it will install. Now this is installed. This one is become the read-only domain controller. Now if I open the Active Directory users and computers here, remember read-only domain controller does not have option permission to write anything, create any object. So if I try to create some object here, so I see the new option here, and also I can create the object. If I select this, it is allowing me to create. But I told you that this is read-only domain controller where you cannot create any object. Now basically when you logged in as a domain administrator account in read-only domain controller, so when you open that Active Directory users and computers, so it actually opens from the main domain controller. If you see here, it is not opening the Active Directory of server 3, it is opening the Active Directory of server 1. That is why it is having the read-write permission. But this domain controller is server 3. So if I logged in as a normal account which has the permission to manage the RODC, so it will not have a write permission, it will have only read permission. I will change this domain controller and I will change to this server 3, and you can see it is RODC. When I select this, it says this domain controller is read only and you will not be able to perform any write operation. Now what we are seeing is server 3, and now when I try to create any user, there is no new option here. That means this one is the read only domain controller. We cannot create any new object here. So this is our site and services. We have seen how the sites and services works, how the replication works, and how we can configure the multiple sites, and also how we can configure the read only domain controller, and what is the benefit of having the read only domain controller.